An open letter to Neil DeGrasse Tyson. Dear Mr. Tyson, I am writing to you as a former man of science that once looked up to you as an inspiring figure in a field with very few charismatic black people. You could say I was a fan. I visited the Hayden Planetarium, I watched all your lectures and television appearances, and I was struck by your ability to explain complex topics in cosmology and astrophysics in simple, concrete terms. However, your recent responses to queries regarding the flat Earth can only be categorized as arrogant, childish, and sneering.
The Earth isn't flat.
I mean, dropping a microphone somehow proves gravity.
This is called gravity.
Also, asking,
At what point do you stop arguing things that have been settled for 4 centuries?
Seems ridiculous to me, since nothing in science is ever settled. Everything in science exists as a theory that only stands until a better theory comes along that more closely matches observations. Would you have told Einstein not to bother because Newton had already settled that gravity business 200 years earlier? I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to have to do much better than that. The resurgence of the flat Earth is not merely a handful of tinfoil hat-wearing crazies who lack intelligence and teeth. This is a shift in consciousness by ordinary people who have started to re-examine the lies they were told as a child. Your job, sir, is to respectfully answer legitimate questions whether or not the answer supports the scientific model that you are a proponent of. Traditionally, scientific progress has not solely come out of the scientific community, but from ordinary people with a different point of view. The scientific method demands that you treat each point of view with respect, as it has the potential to overturn the existing model. And if science refuses to even entertain alternative views, then it is no longer science, but a religion of scientism. So, I would like to ask you 12 questions and give you the opportunity to answer them respectfully, using simple, easy to understand concrete terms that you are so famous for. Because I'm just an ordinary bloke, nowhere near as smart as you are. So, if you could give your answers using real, tangible terms without complex mathematics, abstract concepts, or references to NASA or other data that I have no way of verifying for myself, I'd appreciate it. Question 1. Why is there land at the equator? So, you said that the Earth throughout its life,
even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate. And officially
it's an oblate spheroid, and the bulges are at the equator. So which is easier to move, rock or water? If the gravity is strong enough to prevent the water from being flung off into space, then it's strong enough to hold the much denser rock in place. So only the water should be bulging. So, if the bulk of the Earth's water is at the equator, why is there land at the equator? And please don't say it's because of the height of the land. Most of Africa is flat plain, sometimes under sea level. In fact, the Danakil Desert in northeast Ethiopia is said to be the lowest place on Earth, and incidentally one of the flattest places on Earth too. Question 2. Am I able to see the curvature or not? According to you, you cannot see the curvature even from a plane because the Earth is so big.
The Earth looks flat because, 1, you're not far enough away at your size. 2, your size isn't large enough relative to Earth to notice any curvature at all. It's a fundamental fact of calculus and non-Euclidean geometry. Small sections of large curved surfaces will always look flat to little creatures that crawl upon it.
But apparently you can see ships disappear over the horizon. Now, the official explanation is that you cannot see the curvature across your vision. Apparently we see a horizon about 5 miles away. So in 5 miles there's enough curvature to see a ship disappear, yet I cannot detect that curve over 10 miles, because I can see 5 miles to my left and 5 miles to my right, so I've got an uninterrupted 10-mile span in which I should see enough curve to hide 2 ships, but I don't. So if I see enough curve over 5 miles, why don't I see it over 10 miles? Following on for that, question 3, why haven't we ever seen curved water? If the Earth bends the water into a sphere around it, then if it was to freeze suddenly, we should detect a hump in the water, shouldn't we? So why is it that when Lake Baikal in Siberia freezes over, it is one of the flattest places on Earth, despite being 395 miles long and 49 miles wide? There should be a hump in the middle of it, nearly 20 miles high. So why haven't we ever seen curved water? Question 4. How are we breathing right now? How can there be a high pressure system next to a low or negative pressure system without movement from high to low? So the conventional answer is that gravity holds the air to the Earth. But if I was to evacuate a container to a fraction of the perfect vacuum of space, turn it upside down and puncture the bottom, what do you think would happen? Well, the air would rush in and fill the container. So, how does this much weaker vacuum manage to overcome the much stronger gravity near the surface? How is it that you can heat the air and it will rise against the force of gravity? Wouldn't the air leave the Earth once the sun heats the air? If gravity is the only thing holding the air to the surface of the Earth against the tendency of a high pressure system to escape to a low or negative pressure system, then when the air is heated and so is less affected by a gravitational pull, shouldn't it then succumb to the force exerted towards a region of negative pressure? If, as current scientific opinion suggests, a high pressure system can exist adjacent to a negative pressure system, then there should be a boundary condition of equilibrium where the force towards pressure equalization equals the opposing force of gravity. Thus, any change to the conditions on either side should disturb the equilibrium. Wouldn't a rising column of warm air disturb that boundary layer? So, how are we breathing right now? Question 5. Is the Earth very, very small, or is the Sun very, very near? Eratosthenes' calculation of the Earth's circumference is dependent on the light from the Sun being parallel, as it should be if the Sun is 93 million miles away. But anyone can go out on a sunny day with broken cloud and see that the light that arrives on the Earth is not parallel. The light rays come down at angles, indicating that the Sun is actually very close. Now, the official explanation is that the Earth's atmosphere refracts the Sun's light, and that's why the light comes down at diverging angles. So, if the light from the Sun is always refracted, then that would mean that Eratosthenes' calculation was made with refracted light, and therefore must be wrong, and the Earth must be much, much smaller. So which is it? It seems to me that if you still claim that Eratosthenes' calculations are correct, then the light cannot be refracted. But if the light is not refracted, then the Sun is close. And if the Sun is close, then for Eratosthenes to observe what he did, the Earth must necessarily be flat. Question 6. In a similar vein, how does a convex lens make light diverge? So again, the official explanation for diverging sun rays is that the Earth's atmosphere refracts the Sun's light like a lens. But the Earth's atmosphere is apparently a convex curve, so that would act like a convex lens and converge the light, concentrate it like a magnifying glass. you'd need a concave lens to make light diverge as we observe. Now, some have said that it is actually the angles between layers of clouds that seem to make the light diverge. But again, observation says that this is not the case. Here, there is nothing between the plane and the cloud, and the light is clearly diverging. And this NASA photograph is taken from above the clouds. And still, the sun's proximity is apparent. So, how does the atmosphere make light diverge?